those difficult conversations you absolutely dread having? You know, the ones where you've got to address a performance issue, a missing deadline, or some behavior that's affecting the whole team? Usually, we want to avoid these conversations until they become urgent. That has us then going into those conversations unprepared, emotionally triggered, even charged. And then the conversation goes sideways, and either we say something we really regret, or we don't really say what needs to be said, so nothing changes. And then trust gets broken. But what if I told you there's a proven methodology to having these conversations that builds trust, creates real change, and has people feel seen and heard? I know because I invented it. After today, you're going to know how to specifically, strategically, mentally, emotionally, and if you stay to the end, practically, how to apply this in business and life. This is an exact framework that I've helped hundreds to achieve it. So here's what you need for success. One of my favorite sayings is proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Because the key to living this is knowing that you're making the best decisions by the ones that are making you proud today and proud tomorrow. This is why preparation is actually the key. So let's get started on it. All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. Right? Number one, you want to connect with your higher intention, meaning what you really want to do is take the time to get clear on what your higher intention is for having this difficult conversation. By doing this, what it will do for you is it's going to set you up for success by providing you with the necessary clarity and direction for the conversation. Don't skip it. This is imperative. So it keeps you anchored by knowing your higher intention to what truly matters most to you, rather than getting lost in all the trivial details. This also helps you avoid the conversations going sideways so that you regret something later. Now, as a leader, when we connect with our mission and our vision of our company, asking ourselves, why do we even exist? Like, what's our greatest intention or purpose? Why do we value this? For example, in my business, one of my highest intentions is for our company is that we're always earning ourselves and other people's trust. Like, we really have that as a core value. And by doing that, how we demonstrate this is in the form of having high integrity, where we're operating at a high standard, providing extraordinary value. In other words, we say what we mean and mean what we say. And then we do what is meant to be done. We keep it so simple, all because we value honoring our word. So once you connect to your highest intention, the key here is for you to now hold that as a feeling state. So I'm going to really put that into my body and feel it down in my gut. That is going to actually drive my greatest intention in this conversation. It's so good. So as an end result, I'm holding that feeling state with my higher intention and my bigger purpose, so that I'm leading with that highest intention, and so that it allows me to be more creative in solutions, right? Be oriented towards my desired success rather than being stuck on a position, trying to control others or outcome, which never works. Step two is you want to clarify, what outcome do you most want? Now that you know what your highest intention is, next you got to get clear on what is the specific outcome you most want to achieve with this specific person. So really ask yourself, I really want X, whatever the person's name is, to be what? To be or do what? What is that you want? And by saying it out loud, you actually clarify it for yourself. Let me give you an example. For instance, I'm going to call my teammate Sue. I really want Sue to be more reliable by living into her deadlines, doing what she said she was going to do, by when she said she was going to do it, so that as a whole, the team, all of us, can operate highly effective and efficient. Now, saying that out loud, can you feel, helps me then anchor my mind and my body to that outcome. Right? This is so important so that you can see how it's really achieved. So now it brings us to step number three. And step number three is about clarifying the outcome you don't want. This is so important because knowing what you don't want is equally, if not more important than knowing what you do want, as there's great power in subtraction. What I mean by that is most often it's not speed that's going to give you the success you want, but really removing all the waste, all the ways you distract yourself from achieving your end result. So by clarifying, what is it that you distract yourself with? Like, what is it? Ask yourself, what am I most afraid will happen? What would trigger me the most? Or maybe for you, if you're anything like me, what would have you go into people pleasing or reacting or feel threatened or feel unsafe. One of my favorite quotes is from Joseph Campbell. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. You see, by us not facing that cave in us, what ends up happening when we're going into difficult conversations is by not facing that part of ourselves, what we do is that instead we just don't, we pretend it's not there. We actually act like we don't acknowledge it as our attempt to avoid uncomfortable truths or confrontations. But that does the opposite. It actually prevents growth. And here's the most important part, the resolution we seek. Think about that for a second. Let's just take a pause. If every problem has within it an equal and opposite solution, then I really challenge you to really feel this. Is there such a thing as a problem? Instead, when we face this part of ourselves and really acknowledge it, we actually remove the power from what is unknown because we give it a voice. So then really feel this statement. What I'm saying is when I'm doing my intention of, okay, what do I don't want? What do I not want? I don't want to happen for me is I don't want to go into people pleasing. So instead, what I really want is to just be straight with Sue. And what I don't want Sue to feel is I don't want her to feel like she's not being seen or heard for whatever reason why she didn't do what she was going to do. So in the end, what I don't want is to cause the conversation to end up going sideways or having us both feel disconnected. So ultimately, nothing would change. That's what I don't want to have happen. So when I see clearly what it is I don't want to have happen, what my highest intention is, now I'm really clarifying the outcome that I really want. So that when I do this ahead of time, I can go from someone who would have been reactive to being responsive, right? Because I've allowed myself the time and space to be able to process any blind spots, any fears, worries, or concerns. And if that's something you want some more support with, you can check out a previous video I did called A Proven Step-by-Step Process to Overcoming Fear, Worry, and Doubt. I'll also link it in the description below. By doing this, when we remove that awkwardness, that part of us that would end up creating a regret, we've gotten everything out of the way. Now we go from reactiveness to responsive, from defensiveness to curiosity, from fear to courage. We go from taking everything personal, making it all about ourselves, to then holding fundamental principles and truths that work in any situation, any circumstance, and with any type of person. We go from being on a fixed position to being flexible in our thinking. And lastly, we go from conflict to collaboration, all of which will give us the freedom to turn difficult conversations into ones that are authentic, productive, aligned with our deeper values and our highest intentions. In other words, allowing us to feel so proud of ourselves for really being the leader we've always known we could be, who communicates clearly our intentions and our desires and ultimately achieves the success and the results we most want. No longer doubting or feeling worried or surprised by our own reactions or fearful of conversations that will be counterproductive. In other words, we're no longer concerned and we really focus on what we truly want. Imagine how free you would feel feeling that way. It is amazing. So now that you're ready to have a difficult conversation from alignment so that it's no longer awkward and will produce any kind of regret, we're going on to step 4. And step 4 is all about clarifying what success would really look like for both parties, right? So really taking a few seconds before you're going to have this conversation to then ask, how can I have a candid conversation with X, whoever that person is for you, about a desired outcome that is required, while also avoiding a disliked outcome so that the conversation isn't misinterpreted or wasting both of our time. So for example, for me, I would say something like, how could I have a candid conversation with Sue about her integrity so that she is dependable, uses deadlines, and avoids at the same time having her feel like she's being picked on or have the conversation be misinterpreted and therefore both of us feel like it was a waste of time, right? By asking that clarifying question, I'm solidifying my answers inside of how this is all going to go. All of the above answers so far to these questions now becomes your go-to GPS or your bullet points, right? You can just have some brief little bullet points on, on your desk, on your screen, on how you're going to have that conversation, on how you want to feel, what you want to say, so that you accomplish what you set out to doing. So now it's time to actually have that intention. And that brings us to step number 5. Clearly communicate your intention. From this newfound clarity, you can set the conversation up for success by communicating clearly what your overall intentions are in achieving a successful outcome that's going to create a win-win for both. The key is don't start out using small talk, but instead acknowledge. Let me give you an example. So I would say, hi, Sue, thank you so much for taking the time to really talk with me. Can you feel that? Like I'm really going to connect to something that's genuine for me. I'm not manipulating and acknowledging. So really feel that. And so instead of saying something like this, hi, Sue, how are you? Right? As no one ever likes to feel like they're being set up or played, right? So next, state your intentions. My intention for our conversation is for you to know how valuable and important you are to this team, as well as for you to know how much I care that both of us feel like each of us can really rely on each other. Also, what is important to me is that in having this conversation, that you don't feel in any way that you've been singled out. Or lastly, that this conversation just ends up feeling like it was a waste of both of our time. Like that's a genuine question, right? Like when we're going like, how does that sound to you? Like check in. So we're laying out how the conversation is going to go, but then we want to wait for their response and really connect with them before we continue. Okay, like we want to be on the same page and we want to know exactly how it's going to go so that they can be at ease. Then what we're going to do next is from this way, right? When we wait for their response and they go, yeah, it sounds great. Now we're going to address the specific situation. What I wanted to speak to you about is I wanted to gain an understanding on why you were unable to meet X deadline, right? So in this situation, we're really wanting to gain their perspective. Consider from neutrality that every single person makes a meaning of a situation or circumstance. And we can't assume we know what that meaning was. So whatever they say, you just want to acknowledge and validate their perspective. The key here that I want to give you the most is acknowledgement doesn't equal agreement. It doesn't mean that you would have seen that in the same way. And you don't need to in order to gain their collaboration. So after acknowledging and validating their perspective, you can say something like, wow, like I really get that like X came up unexpectedly, or I really get that you were waiting on X, someone else, to complete their work that they needed to do. Now you want to ask them a deeper probing question. So after you acknowledge, go deeper. And I'm curious, did you ever think to advise them on our deadline? Now, what's important here is the missing behavior or skill. That is why that result wasn't gotten. Can you feel that? Allowing them to answer. Again, I'm not setting them up for failure to go, now I'm going to clobber you with whatever that answer is. I'm actually really listening for a deeper understanding of what's happening behind why the behavior wasn't there. So when, whatever they say, allow them to answer. So in my case, let's say Sue said no, right? This is when you want to take your team member through our aligned intelligence method, right? To be able to coach them on how to, just a few questions. It's very, very simple, right? You want to be able to coach them on uncovering why, like what's behind their resistance or their missing behaviors or skills that is keeping them from not wanting to hold themselves or other people to deadlines, right? All which will be coming from their protective self. Right? If you've been following me at all, you understand that all of that is coming from their original core trauma. So because of this, consider there's no such thing as moving forward and moving backwards. There really is no future or past. I want you to consider they're just blind spots that need to be cleared. And then skill sets that are missing, along with behaviors and actions that need to be implemented, period. So the truth is, the biggest predictor of change is always going to come down to if there's a person in this person's life that can help them uncover their blind spots. Can you see that? Like without someone being able to help us see our own blind spots, we'll forever be not able to not be capable or have the ability to achieve what we want, but not because we don't have the ability to, but because we're missing something in a blind spot. That's what really is happening. So they can then develop the necessary skill which will set them free. And the question I have for you, if you like really are with me on side of this, is because if it's not you as the leader, the owner, the CEO, the business person, the entrepreneur, then who? Because the truth is success in business is all about mastering the relationships game, right? It's all about developing skills, not enforcing our wills. This is not about tolerating unwanted behavior, but rather it's about coming home, coming back to clarity on what success would look like for both parties so that we commune in communication, right? And you do this by knowing what is your highest intention. So once you've supported your team member on clearing their resistance or deadlines, resistance to deadlines or holding others to them, all right, now it's time to help them see what are the new behaviors necessary for them to succeed. For example, I could say something like, Sue, so that we're always building trust within ourselves and others, what are the new behaviors you now see that you're going to be implementing in these specific circumstances to get that outcome, right? And I can add that we then know, the team and I know, that we can then rely on you to get that work done by your deadlines. The key here is wait for their response. What we're looking for in this situation is for them to really validate and address the missing behaviors or skills that they didn't put in. And if they had the support, if they needed more support because they needed you to tell them what the missing behavior is, let's just say it was completely a blind spot, then what you want to do is ask them, once you help them uncover it, can you see, let me give you as an example. So can you see that by you asking the person, like for two options of a deadline, like by when will you get that done? Today at 5 or tomorrow at 2, right? That's an example. Can you see by doing that, that you would actually be able to support them choosing a deadline, holding them to it, and moving through so you can accomplish what you need to so that everyone wins? If you have to help them uncover what it is that they were missing, then what you want to do next is actually ask them to validate what they heard by what you said, right? So in that case, I would say, so Sue, just to make sure that I'm being clear, what did you just hear me say? And then you really want to wait for that response. Or you could say, could you please repeat back what you agreed to do so I know that we're both on the same page? Can you see how what I'm doing here is I'm getting their buy-in? The key is in when we do this is it prevents any false assumptions that the communication was actually clear when in fact it wasn't, right? So we're really solidifying this as well as ensuring that they can see how they would have to do a totally different behavior. Because the truth is, if they can't see it, they can't achieve it. Now that they can see the missing skill sets and how they're going to apply them, next, it's time to get their agreement, right? This is the agreement so that they come into alignment with the end result of the outcome we most want. So in getting the agreement, which is step number 6, what we want to do is ask this, right? Moving forward, Sue, what are the specific daily habits that you're going to be doing to ensure you will be able to meet the deadlines consistently? Right? How awesome is that? Then what we want to do is then at that is we're now looking for them to really be on the same page and answer us back so we can see clearly that the communication really has been gotten. Afterwards, then we want to end by acknowledging them while also checking in. Here's an example of that. Acknowledgement is like, thank you so much, Sue, for this conversation. I really feel like we both have gained clarity and direction on the results, and you now have the skills on what's necessary to put in so that we can create this together. How about you, right? Like here, we're really wanting to see if there was anything missing in the way. This is an opportunity for them to say, well, I'm not sure about this, or I need to ask about this, right? So we want to wait for their response and acknowledge and celebrate. We want to celebrate. And now it's time for you to celebrate yourself because you have just completed a difficult conversation collaboratively. By learning, practicing, and mastering these 6 steps, you will no longer feel uncomfortable while having difficult conversations, but instead you'll feel confident, centered, and aligned, no longer feeling like a lone wolf. These are the 6 steps to mastering difficult conversations from alignment. And when you do this, you're going to learn that you no longer have to struggle with fear, worry, doubt. And if you do still struggle with them, then what you want to do is click the link below and I will see you on the other video inside.